Yeah, well, thank you very much. Can we also put it on the big screen? Yep. Ah, there we are. Okay, so when you download this PDF, maybe later today, there will actually be notes in the PDF. If you download it right now, that's not true. But it will be true very soon. So should I start my own company? Mostly from a Dutch European perspective, because these things are very different in the US and even in the UK. And, but it's not just for people who want to start their own company. It's maybe also when you do not want to start your own company, but still want to understand why does my company prefer vendors over me, for example. And so it's a broad presentation. This is actually part 3 of a trilogy. In the first part, we discussed like why is it that my boss is super stupid and makes more money than me and has a better life. And you can find the link to these presentations on the first page, so you can see the whole trilogy. And the second presentation was how do I get a better job, career development, and the current presentation is should I even have a job? And I think this presentation could be irritating in a way that sometimes recruiters can be very irritating because not just because they spam you, but also because they remind you that maybe your current work situation is not the best situation and that there are other things you could be doing. And that can be frustrating. So apologies for that. But maybe you'll get something out of this presentation anyhow. So briefly, as a reminder, we want good and fun work. And it exists, it is real. Some of us have it, we go to work, we're happy that we go to work. Well, maybe not that happy, but at least it's sort of a nice chance to do useful things. And some of us, and many of you, I know, actually sort of really hate going to work on Monday, and it really sucks. And eventually you might become convinced that good work doesn't really exist, or fun work. And I'm here to say it does exist, and you could actually have an environment in which you have fun for what you do, and it matters what you do, and you enjoy what you do. But it may be that you cannot make this happen at your current employer because they are just not like that. And that might be one reason to start your own company, because you just want to create a better place to work. So I previously presented on the joy of work, and which I call the spiritual reward and the monetary reward. And there are jobs that are like super fun and you really enjoy them, and you're never gonna leave that employer until the employer goes bust or disappears because the job is just so good, it just pays like shit. And eventually that means you can no longer pay for electricity and heating. So it is worth your while trying to sort of balance how much fun is my work, how satisfying is my work, and how much money do I make. And a few years ago, I presented on this, and in the upper left corner, for example, you have the Saudi job, where you get paid stunning amounts of money to sit in the desert and fix servers. And at least it makes a lot of money, but it's no fun. There's also the job lower left, where it's a really shitty job. You're always on call, and you're still getting paid badly. So this is sort of the situation for having a regular job, and you can see that it is all over the place. Now, I did some scientific research to find out what happens if you start your own company? How does this graph change? And it was a lot of work to make this graph, and I have a very precise result. It's like this. And so in the middle, you still see sort of the Saudi job and these other things. And if you start your own company, you can become very rich, and you can also become extremely poor. And your life will not get better than like a really good normal job, because it's not that much more fun, but your life can get a lot worse. So before you want to start your own company, realize that the outcomes are not guaranteed. And well, there will be somewhere in this ellipse, but that's all I can prove to you. So we start the weird graphs here. This represents a company. And there are 6 people working really in that company, they're employees. And that company also has 4 vendors in the situation. They get their office from someone because they did not build their own office. They get a water supply from someone, they get a power supply, and they also have a bank. So this is sort of a minimal company with 6 people working there, and they have 4 vendors.
Hello.
And you might think there's a really big difference between the 6 people that really work there. So they have a job, they did not start their own company, they work somewhere, and the 4 vendors. And it turns out that from the manager, who sits in the middle, and he looks a bit evil, and he also is a bit evil. This is the manager of a company. This is like the board or the owners or the founder of the company, the C. I don't know, but this is the guy that's really, or girl, but he's evil, so he's he. He's really in charge, and he actually does not see that much of a difference between the vendors that provide electricity and the 6 people that actually work there, except that these employees, he buys labor from them. So if you want to or not, you're already some kind of vendor to your employer, you just sell labor. But you are an extremely weird vendor, because they must continue to pay you even if you do not come. This is sort of nice. And they also must tell you in advance that, yeah, we're going to pay you for the next 12 months, or maybe we're going to pay you like forever. And if you hurt an employee, it's actually your fault. That sucks. It's like different than from other people you hire if it's your fault all of a sudden. And even if they retire, you must somehow continue to pay them in many cases with the pension funds. And even if they die, you must continue to pay their partner. It's like the weirdest vendor ever, these employees. And but they are, relatively speaking, cheap, though. So you have to pay an employee a minimum amount of money, but there's often also a maximum amount of money where you just say, look, we cannot pay you more than this, or in many cases, we're not even allowed to pay you more than this because of the collective bargaining agreement. That does not happen in IT a lot, but it does happen in many other fields. And finally, employees are actually, they store knowledge. They, unlike vendors, they cannot just walk away. They actually run your company. They know about your company. And this is something that is often forgotten in modern companies, where they treat employees as some kind of, pretty weird vendors. Because the weirdness doesn't stop. If your employee messes up, it's still your fault. So the employee deletes all the storage, drops all the databases, and you can still only get angry at the employee. You know, that sucked that you did that. But you cannot sue them in any way. This is not entirely true. You can mess up so badly that your employer can sue you, but it's rare. It requires fire. And so the thing is, if you, as a company, if you hire people and they are the wrong people, it's your fault, idiot. You hired them. And so actually, from a company perspective, hiring people is full of problems, because if they do not do the work you want them to do, it's very difficult to negotiate with them because, you hired them. And they have all kinds of rights. So you cannot just say, look, we're all going to fire you because I'm disappointed in you. It doesn't work that way. But vendors are a lot more fun. Because at least in theory, you could sue them if they mess it up, in theory. But they could offer you things. So let's say you buy stuff from a very big network vendor, and one day the network vendor says, I think you're a really good person, maybe you would enjoy a job here over a big network vendor. And we couldn't pay you too much, maybe 2x, 3x what you make now. But think it over. And you might think that this doesn't happen, but this actually does happen. Because it's very easy for a big company to just say, hey, we think you're an expert in our stuff. Why don't you come work with us? And it's a very reasonable thing to say. So that means that from an employer perspective, if you have to choose, am I going to work with my own people? Or am I going to work with a vendor that has these sexy conferences in Hawaii and that talk about my future there? Then it's a lot more fun to work with a vendor. And also, you can, in theory, change vendors. I mean, try doing it for once, but in theory, you could just say, look, we're fed up with this vendor C, and we want now to go to vendor J, or whatever. You cannot go to your employees and say, I think you're all ugly, and you're disappointing, and I want new ones. That's not going to happen. And the other thing is, and that's weird accounting tricks, if you employ people the old-fashioned way, so you actually give them a salary and you pay them every month, your shareholders are like super depressed about that. They think, you have to pay all these people every month, and we really don't like that. And they like it a lot better if you overpay your vendors. Maybe that's because shareholders can also buy shares in your vendors and not in your employees. I actually think it works like that. Some solutions have been found. So this is the same weird graph as before, But 2 of these people have now been moved outside of the circle. And they're still supplying labor, but they are now contractors. And that means that all kinds of things have changed. So per hour, they appear to get more money, but they also no longer get anything else. And so this is a variation on the theme. People might say, hey, I'm a contractor, I'm an entrepreneur, I am registered with the Chamber of Commerce, but no, you're really sort of an employee with fewer ties to the company. So if you do this, if you become a contractor, your situation just changes. It could be better, it could be worse. You have these sort of situations where it's better. So let's say you are a lawyer or a plumber or an electrician. These are all very important people, especially the plumber, if you miss one. It makes sense to hire these people as contractors because you don't need a contract, you don't need a plumber all the time, or if you do, you have other problems. So these people can be sort of contractors, charged by the hour, but they're still sort of, they work all over the place. They're not really tied to one employer. But very often, when you are a contractor, or in Dutch, ZZP'er, it's not because you are so good. It is because the company has a reason for not really hiring you. Because that might be that we have a hiring stop. We cannot hire real people anymore, but we can hire contractors, which are somehow not real people. Or it's an accounting trick, where people say we do not have budget for this, but we do have budget for that. So if someone says, do you want to be a contractor, you have to realize that they're not really doing it because they love you. They're doing it because it makes sense for them. It might make sense for you as well, but really think hard, because even if they are paying you more than they would be paying you as a regular employee, they're still not doing it because they love you. So the risk here is that you end up as a sort of fake company. So you are registered with the Chamber of Commerce, you are a provider of computing services, but actually you're just an employee with no guarantees. But it could be worse. And I was sort of shocked by this, where people said, yeah, it's just not enough that we have a contractor. We actually want to hire the contractor for someone else, where you are also a contractor. And this is extremely common right now. Many people like you are maybe hired like that already. So that's the poor guy on the left. And these people, they're sort of doing trying to get you as far away from the company as possible, so that they don't have to guarantee you anything. This is also not a good sign when that happens. And it's a warning sign, even, because they don't trust you to leave when the time comes. They have hired a specific company to make sure that you do leave. The worst thing that could happen, and it's really already happening, that's like the gig economy, where you're not even paying people per hour anymore. You're actually paying them to do stuff with servers, and you get paid per server. That's like the worst form of employment ever. And it is starting to happen already. I'm now seeing signs of this, so that you are really not an entrepreneur if you do that. You did not start your own company if you get paid €5 per server you upgrade. So what is a real? So let's say I now told you what is not a company, but what is starting a company? What does it mean? And the essence is that if you do something in a smarter way, so you can have more customers or do more things per hour, you get the profits. And this never happens when you work for a normal company, because if you work like super hard, then you work super hard, and at the end of the year they go like, well, thank you, it's nice, here's a bottle of wine. There are some counterexamples, people that actually get real big commissions, for example, the people in sales or in pre-sales. And these people can actually sort of can make a difference. But you still, as an employee, you will never really have the freedom to say, hey, I'm doing this stuff differently. I found a better way of doing this, because if you found a better way of doing it, you have to convince the whole company that they have to do it. Because they are not just interested in what you achieve, they also want to know how you achieve it. Whereas if you are running your own company and you found a smarter way of, I don't know, maintaining 25,000 servers, and you can now do that on Monday, and the rest of the week you have nothing to do, they don't care, because they're happy that you maintained the servers. And you can do all kinds of new things on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So A big difference between working somewhere and having your own company is if you do it smarter, you can improve your life tremendously. Whereas if you, at your work, you made it so that you can configure all the servers on Monday, they still expect you to show up on Tuesday somehow. You cannot just stay home. The downside is, if it goes wrong, if you lose money, you actually, you lose the money. And an employer, if you just delete all the servers, the worst thing that can happen is you get fired. And if you do this to your own company, you get sued and you go bankrupt and you have to live in a hut for 3 years. And so it's a very different situation. Because you really can lose it all. If you have any dreams of, I'm going to launch my own company and I'll get my corporate shield, or the BV, as it's called in Dutch, and it will protect me from going bankrupt, it will not. If you mess up with your own company, you will go bankrupt and it will suck tremendously. And it is also easily possible to have a company that is sort of almost going bankrupt, which means that you have to accept any kind of work to just stay alive. And there are many companies that start with big ideas and they end up just selling hours. And then you became a contractor with a huge amount of debt, which is not good, and you might work yourself to death. Ask me how I know. No, it was not that bad, but it was bad, really bad. So I now made it sound like really bad. So why would anyone even ever start a company? And there are a number of reasons for that, and I'm going to list a few relevant ones, because you might have no choice. Your job, the current job that you have, might disappear from underneath you, because the thing you were doing is moving to the cloud. Or the thing you are doing is being outsourced to companies 12 time zones away. So it may be that your job, and not just your specific job, but your kind of job, might simply be disappearing on you. Because employers have decided that they no longer want to hire your kind of person. They want to get what you do as a service from someone. They don't want to get it from you as an employee. So it may be that if you look at the signs within your own company and in your own marketplace and in your own business, and you keep wondering why is everyone buying everything as a service these days, one day they're going to buy you as a service. And then it is better if they buy it from you as a service. Because that is where the opportunity lies. The opportunity lies in recognizing what is going on in my industry, and maybe my time as an employee is over, maybe people want to buy this as a service. Maybe with a group of people we can work together and start selling this as a service. Because there is enough specific stuff going on that you don't, not everything, there's not an app for everything. There is not an as a service for everything, because every employer has weird software, weird hardware, weird customers that are just too specific. Another terrible thing is getting too old. The Netherlands, the job market here is extremely ageist. So if you are getting a bit old and you say, hey, I want to work as a front-end web developer, they're like, no, all the people we hire for that are 24. And so you might simply find that people no longer want to hire you for a normal job. However, everyone is happy to buy stuff from a company because they're not going to ask the company how old are the people that work there. So you might simply be getting aged out of your job. So I want to list these reasons for starting a company that you might simply have to do something. You might do something useful. You get lots of freedom to do great things. You get lots of freedom to mess it up also. And you could even say, look, I've worked for some terrible companies and they were not nice places to work. I'm going to create a nice place to work. I'm going to start a company, it's going to be good for people. And together we're going to do, and I know that a number of you have done that. And so it is also a way of dealing with terrible workplaces. And the final reason is you could become really rich. That is something that could happen, but it's going to take you a lot of time. But it's sort of nice to keep it in mind that it could happen. So some scenarios. You could have this, you say, I'm going to start a company, I need a big idea. I need something, it's going to take lots of time to make. And there are 3 favorite companies of mine, Tailscale, that many of you will know, and they thought really hard about that. Thinkst, which is in the cybersecurity field, they also spent a lot of time making a really cool product. And Pavel's Fastnetmon is over there. Yeah, the thing is, I'm lighted really well, so you can see me really well. But Fastnetmon was also a work of love that has been developed over many years, and it takes a lot of time. And it's difficult because you have to find that time, while you also already have a job. But it could be worse. You could have an idea that not only requires a lot of time, but also tons of money. So if you say, I'm going to be my own cloud provider, well, you need to bring a lot of money because you cannot hire the cloud on Amazon. A third option that I want to mention here is that you actually launch a company not from scratch, but maybe together with your current employer or your former employer or a bunch of companies. And I'll get to that now. So what could happen? Inside every company, there are so-called legacy products. So there's a product, and the company doesn't really want to sell those anymore. They don't like it anymore, and they want to do new things, but they still have a ton of business doing these old things. There is a shit ton of money in old stuff. KPN, for example, made a lot of money selling ISDN lines right until the shutdown. And British Telecom, even if you are no longer a BT customer, you can pay them to keep your bt.com email address. And they make, I think, £50 million a year on that. Which is like real good money, but it's not the sort of the core interest of British Telecom for doing that kind of thing. So if you work somewhere, or if you know an employer and they know that they have this business line that they don't really like anymore, but yeah, it's still making money, and maybe you like it. It is entirely possible to talk to your employer or former employer and say, hey, I know you hate all those fax machines, but I'm like really good with fax machines. Can I take over the fax machine business for you? Can we make a deal that you keep selling it under your brand, but actually I run it, and it's my own thing that I do. And if you look at your employer, you can almost always find a corner of the business where they're like, yeah, it's not really us anymore. But you could also find some extremely old hardware or software maybe that is still there, it's out of support, and they have trouble keeping it running, but they still need it. They still need it. And you could maybe say, well, you're not getting support from the original vendor anymore, but I know this hardware and software like really well. Let me run this for you as a service. It's also entirely possible. And maybe I'll migrate it to new stuff, but you don't know that because you just now are buying it from me as a service. And there are also things where a company is keeping a piece of software alive, but they're actually a bit too small to keep that alive. It's a bit too much work for a small company. And you could say, well, let me take over that software, I'll keep it alive for you, and I also find a few other customers for that software, and then everything will get better, because you are just a little bit too small for keeping this stuff alive. And so there are multiple scenarios where you can launch a company without starting from scratch, and your employer might even be like really happy with that. And there are, in the notes, you will find later some other scenarios where this also works. This is a key point, and this is maybe the most important point of the whole presentation. If you think about, hey, I want to start a company, I'm going to make this cool technical thing, because we're all technical people, and customers are going to be really happy with my cool technical thing. And then you have to realize that even your old colleagues are probably also going to be really happy with your cool technical thing. Your colleagues are not buying from you. Your colleagues will never buy anything from you. The people that buy from you is this evil director guy in the middle. And he cares about all kinds of other things. He is not interested in the fact that your technology is so cool. He is worried about, will I be blamed for picking this new vendor? Because they have no customers except me. Will it solve my problems? Are there guarantees? Does it look good? Because you might think, hey, I'm selling this cool technical stuff. I don't need to spend time on my website. But you have to realize that this evil manager guy, he also has friends. And he wants to say, hey, I found this cool new company. And they made this cool new technical thing that we bought, and it's on coolnewthing.nl. Now suddenly, coolnewthing.nl has to look really good, because he has to show the other people that he made the right choice. So if you ever decide to launch your own company, realize, do not make your former colleagues happy, also make them happy, but they are not the ones doing business with you. You have to do everything so that the people that actually spend money feel that it's good. So think about the people with the suits. Credibility. That's a problem. You just launched your company, no one knows about you, no one has ever heard from you. And the weird thing is that an existing vendor, even a terrible one, has more credit than you do. So I experienced this with my first work with Kazema, the cable company, and I built some nice solutions for them, and they worked, and they said, no, we want to do this professional because you are just this one-man guy, a one-man company. We want to buy this from our preferred vendor, Capgemini. And they had messed up all their previous projects. It was all shit. But still, they said, no, we're going to do this with Capgemini because the risk of just doing it with you is too large. And it failed gloriously. It was super nice to see. They totally messed it up. But they still got the credit because they were a big company with big sales teams and everything. So credibility is a huge problem when you start. Well, there are ways to speed it up. There is a company, Ironport. They made a spam filtering and sent mail appliance, and they wrote a nice blog how, as a fresh company, they did everything right. So if you got trial hardware from them and you ordered it on Monday, it would arrive on Tuesday, and Tuesday afternoon, someone would call you to ask you if you liked it. And all the stuff they delivered was super good. Their business cards were extremely heavy. And so they took everything they could tune to make them look credible, and they turned that to the max. And it actually worked for them. And or just indeed sending people free samples and stuff and being really open. But it's difficult. The thing that worked for me twice is something else. And I think there's a lesson in here. You need to find a customer that has no choice to do business with you. They just have to do business with you. And this worked for me twice. It worked for PowerDNS. It worked for my Fox IT company. And for PowerDNS, the story was that our big competitor, Nominum, had just quadrupled all their pricing. So all of a sudden, there were all kind of telcos on the market that said, yeah, we're not going to pay those guys. And it turned out there was no alternative. There was no other name server vendor you could pay at that time. So that's why PowerDNS suddenly became a success. The customer had no choice. A lot of fun. And but this could still happen to you, because your employer might have this old legacy software. You are the only one that knows about this legacy software. So it could well be that you split off from the company and say, no, you're going to do business with me. Because who else is going to understand this 25-year-old crap that you built? So you try seeing if you can find something there. Now, I'm nearly done. The big plan. Everyone wants to have a big business plan, and they sit down with their spreadsheets and make all kinds of calculations, and you might as well not do that. Because you will never have a detailed plan for your business. You don't know how many customers you will get. You don't know what they will pay. You don't know how much work it's going to be for you to deliver that stuff. But you still need to think real hard. Do I understand why people would want to do business with me? Why does my employer no longer want this legacy business? And why do I want it? And what do the customers of the legacy business, what do they expect? And this is like a real deep thinking. And it's a strange exercise because no matter how hard you think, the plan is not going to work. Because the reality is going to be different. So you have a big plan, reality disagrees. But still, many people start their company without at least having this big plan. So you really need to work on it. There's a brief book called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. If you hunt for it, you can find a free PDF, but it's also worth it. And that is like a really good book for thinking about why should I be in this business. You'd also realize that if you look at successful companies and you want to see, hey, what did they do right? How did they become a successful company? And you have to realize many of us just got lucky. We were at the right place at the right time. We were not some kind of huge visionary. We just happened to be at the right place at the right time. What about all these companies that were not in the right place at the right time? You don't know about them because they went bust. So you are entering a lottery here, but the better your plan is, the more lottery tickets you get. Money, we don't have time for that, so other time maybe. So should you start your own company? Well, you may have no choice to do one because your current job or your current job situation might just disappear on you. Know the options. If you are a contractor, you're not a real employee, and you might end up in a situation where you run lots and lots of risks. And it might be possible to take a look at your current employer or your previous employer or other companies you know and see, hey, is there maybe something you want to get rid of, and maybe I can do that for you as a company, as a service, and think real hard before you do anything, because the plan still won't survive, but the thinking will definitely help you. And with that, I hit the end of my presentation. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Bert. Like I said after your presentation about the salaries, as an employer, I don't know what to think of this. But you touched many points, for me at least, because I think all the stages that you mentioned, I've been through with Fusix and with other companies before. I can relate very much to everything you have said. So thank you very much for this presentation. I am surprised that there are no queues at the microphones, because you get a chance to talk to Bert Hubert for free.
Hey, I just want to ask, maybe it's a completely bold question, but I really had an idea that if you have some limited liability company that is protecting you from going bankrupt with your personal stuff. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, so it's very simple. In theory, the company will protect you. As your own company is going down, as things are getting worse, so customers are not paying, you are running out of money, your bank comes to you and says, now you must personally sign for all these debts as well. And if you do not sign that piece of paper, your company goes immediately bankrupt and nothing, and the company is gone. And this happened to me, so I had to tell my wife, yeah, you need to sign this piece of paper because the bank wants our house. And I had 2 BVs, and they don't protect you. So assume that it can go very badly.
Yeah,
Robin.
the easy question. Now you are the manager of a company because you just started your own company. How do you avoid becoming the bad, evil, vendor-loving, people-hating manager?
I think that's all up to you. I mean, this is. I mean, I do it. Let me. You will always have moments in your company where you have to, for example, you have a terrible customer, and you know that that customer is going to make life hell for everyone. But the state of the company is such that you have to accept that customer. And the trick is to really know that you can do that maybe once or twice before you have yourself turned into this evil place. But it's your responsibility. And if you think you would be an evil manager, then please stay with your company.
Thanks.
You're not a manager at your existing company, right? No.
Julia, microphone, please.
Okay. So I've done the running my own business thing. Graduating from university in the middle of the dot-com bust. Not a great job market. But I hated it in the end because I wanted to be a geek and I was 99% admin. Do you have any tips on how to just avoid the getting stuck with all the admin of running the business so you're never actually getting to do the stuff that you wanted to do when you started?
Well, it's a very good question, but it also comes from the other end these days, because many of us are now, within our employees, completely stuck in admin, and if we would touch any server prompt, people would break our fingers. So if you actually, for many of us, actually we need to start our own company in order to get more hands-on, because company life has already taken that away from us. So that's not quite the answer to your question, but it's still one reason why people start their own companies. I spent like big money, relatively speaking, on outsourcing my accountancy and fiscal stuff completely. To the point that the Dutch tax office sends you these blue envelopes. I never see a blue envelope. When one arrives, it's for my neighbors. It's not for me. And it was no, I don't think it was expensive. In the end, I did pay good money for it, for completely outsourcing that, but it also allowed me to focus on the technical stuff. And so even though it feels like a lot of money in the beginning, I would really recommend seeing what you can do to have as little admin as possible.
Thank you.
Hi. First of all, thanks a lot for the talk. It was rather interesting. But just to get back to the first question that was asked, in the Netherlands, as you just said, if I'm understanding it correctly, you are not directly responsible. Your company is, but the banks will go after you if you get into debt too much.
Yes.
Okay, then it's great. Thank you.
The best that can be said for having this company is that it will delay any bad stuff. And that can be extremely useful, that delay. But it's in the end, if you mess it up, it's tricky to walk away from it.
Okay, thank you very much, Bert.
Heel blij mee.
Dankjewel.